And he that was in the hinder part of the ship, asleep on a pillar. And they awoke him, and said unto him, Master, carest thou not that we perish? And he arose, and rebuked the wind, and said unto the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said unto them, Why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith? And they feared exceedingly, and said one to another, What manner of man is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? Chapter 5, verse 1 is the commencing of this reading. And they came over unto the other side of the sea, unto the country of the Gadarene. You may be seated. Want to use for a message this morning, trying to make it to the other side. Now, you will be, for many of us who are here this morning, we are all trying to make it to the other side. One way or another, we are trying to make it to the other side. If we look at, for instance, I myself have been battling with Social Security for over 6 years, trying to get them to resend or remit to me the money that they've taken from me. But this have been a battle because they want you to go through all of their administrative remedies. And after you've gone through the administrative remedies, you have to go through waiver and different other methods that they have set up. Then you wind up going to the administrative judge. And once you've gone to the administrative judge and the administrative judge have passed and made a decision, they still won't interact on what the administrative judge says. So now you have but one other level, and that's just you have to take it to federal court. Sometimes when you're going through, excuse my French, hell, and the justice system is giving you much problem, you can't help but look to yourself and say, Lord, if I can just make it to the other side. Y'all following what I'm saying? You've gone through it. You've been beat down. You've gone through all that they've asked of you, but now you're still having confrontation. It's to a point where you just say to yourself, Lord, if I can just make it to the other side, I'll be all right. Can I make it plain for you? Just as ask the average woman who decided to have a baby because of the love that she had for a particular man. In the beginning, her heart is filled with joy of becoming a mother. She's very excited about she's going to be a mother. But after going through some heartache, some back pain, swelling of feet, itching, and whatnot, she says to herself, Lord, I'll be glad when it's over if I can just make it through this pregnancy. I can make it to the other side where I can walk out of the pregnancy stage and walk into the motherhood stage. I would be all right, because she wants it to end. She wants it to kind of like, not saying that she don't want to go through those pain. No women want to go through. I once asked a woman one time, I said, can you describe to me what it is to have a baby? Can you describe the pain to me? And she said, baby, is like taking your top lip and pulling it over your head. That's what it's like. I said, that's a lot of pain. She said, that's not the pain that you go through having a baby. You know, I know you have all these other stuff y'all use, the epidural and all that stuff, but there's still a lot of pain there. Talk to an individual who have been diagnosed with cancer, a person who's been diagnosed with cancer and the treatment that they have to go through trying to take those treatments. When you leave out of the hospital, you're tired, you're exhausted, you're weak. That person who is going through those treatments will say, if I could just make it to the other side. That lets you know that people are still going through a lot in this life that we're living. Some of us go through hell trying to make peace with other people. Some of us wish that people would just love us for who we are. But after going through all of that, we come up with this scenario that if I could just make it to the other side. And some of us who are living this life, who've been buked and scorned, who've been hurt, who've been humiliated, they just look at life and say, over there is starting to look better than over here. What are you talking about, Reverend William? Sometimes you go through so much, over there start to look better than over here. Well, after going through hell with a lot of people, after having hell, catching hell on your job, after looking at how you had to go through trying to preserve your children, you get to a point where you start looking at over there and what's happening over here. And since over there starts to look better to you, and you start to get a loose grip on over here because you're ready to get out of here. So over there start looking better than over here. Are you following me? Well, some of us look at that theory in one vernacular because in most cases it looks like that person has had enough of terra firma, have had enough of what they're going through on earth, and they just want to get to that place where they can have peace, joy, harmony, and be happy just worshiping the Lord. We come to the church house and we try to have peace in the church house, but some places in some churches there is no peace in the church house. And what happens is that when you walk in the church and you're catching hell in the church house and catching hell on your job and catching hell with the people that you know, you start looking at how it looks over there and how it looks over here, and what you say is, I'm just ready to give it up. Now, I'm just ready to go home. I'm ready to get it over with. Some people are sick and they have pain and they're hurting. Not just hurting from the sickness, but hurting from the problems that they are going through with their family and friends. So they just look and say, over there, it starts to look better than over here. Jesus is on the seashore, and he's talking to his disciples. And the disciples getting ready, he boarded a boat because the multitude, the people, got to a point where they were just grabbing at him, because some believed that if I could just reach out and touch the hem of his garment, I could be made whole from whatever disease I was in. Whatever disease have taken control over me. Let me talk to you about that a little while. There are demonic spirits in this world that looks for an open door. And you've got to be careful on how you open a door for them to come in. And I gave y'all a scenario the last time on a man who's sitting down in a nightclub and watching a woman come walking through the door. He catches the scent of her perfume. He catches the light in her eyes. He catches the shape of her body. And he says to himself, if I could just have that. You open a door. When you open a door, you plant a seed in your subconscious. When you plant that seed in your subconscious, your conscience can always resurrect that plight, that situation. So the next time you see her, your conscience resurrect that in your subconscious where it's growing. So you've just opened the door. Sin is sickness. That's because you're doing some things that God told you that you shouldn't do, but you still have a desire to do it because of the fleshly desires that you have. So when you open that door for that spirit to come in, he comes in, and when he gets in, it's hell to get him out of there. Oh, you tried prayer and everything else trying to get him out of there, but it's hell to get him out of there. So Jesus says to the disciple, he gives them a command. He says, let us pass over to the other side. You got to be mindful how Jesus says things to them. He gives them a destination, but he does not tell them what they will have to go through to get to the other side. He simply tells them, just like he tells us, he says, I want you to study my word. I want you to saturate your heart with my word. I want my word in you. If you keep my word in you, then there are some things that you're going through that you will not go through. So Jesus says to them, all I want you to do is pass over to the other side. But on their way across the sea, they run into a storm. The storm starts to beat. The rain is coming down in the ship. The waves are tossing the ship backwards and forward. And so the disciples became confused. Then I think it was Peter. I want to say it was Peter. The Bible doesn't say it was Peter, but I want to believe that it was Peter who decided we better go wake up Jesus. So he goes down in the hinder part of the ship. And I always wonder, why would Jesus go in the hinder part of the ship and take a pillow and go to sleep? Well, the hinder part of the ship is where your steering is. And we have to always remember that Jesus is always trying to steer us where? In the right direction. But sometimes we'll get off track and we'll go in another direction. So they go down in the ship and they wake him up. When they wake him up, Jesus kind of just, you know how a person knows when they wake up, he just wakes up and he goes like, what's the problem? And Peter says to him, Master, you don't see all the water in the ship? We're in a storm, a vehement storm. You don't see all of what's happening? Carest thou not that we perish? Jesus kind of put his hand on the side of his head and say to him, he said, what's the matter with y'all? You're just in a storm. Why are you panicking? Why are you so fearful? What is the problem? I've given y'all everything that you need to get to the other side. You're in a fight, but it's a fixed fight. The battle have already been fought. It has already been won. I have overcome. Why are you so fearful? When you look at it, the disciples were confused because fear had did what? Grabbed a hold of them. You got to be careful. When fear grab a hold of you, it'll make you run. It'll make you stand and fight because you don't have no other choice. But you've got to remember that God have given the spirit of fear to no man. And so you don't want to have that spirit of fear. So he says to the disciple, I told y'all that you were going to the other side. Do y'all think that I actually left heaven and came down through 4 and 2 generations to get on board a boat and die out here in the sea? What's your problem? Let me tell y'all something. I have more to do than to die out here in the sea. I've got to meet blind Bartimaeus on the other side. So I can't afford to die out here in the sea. I've got to meet Tabitha. I've got to bring her back to life. I've got to meet the demon-possessed man. And I've got to rid him of the demon that's in him. Y'all think I left heaven to come all the way down here to die in the sea? He says, no. I've got to die. I've got to get to Calvary. I have to be nailed to an altar, which is my cross. I have to be lifted up between heaven and hell before I can die and tell my Father, it is finished. What is finished? All that you have assigned to my hand to do. Some of us who are here this morning, God have assigned some things to your hand to do. But you, as an individual, have not finished what God have assigned to your hand to do. And until you finish it, you won't come full circle with life. You have to remember that this earth is not your home. It's just a place where you were manifested here on earth. But even though you were manifested here, your eternal home is still waiting for you to come back. You're here on a vacation, if I could put it that way. And after your vacation is over, then you have to go back home. As we look in the text, Jesus says to them, he says, what I need to do is, he said, I want y'all to watch me. Because basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave from the ship, the hinder part of the ship, and I'm going to the top. But I want y'all to watch me. Y'all came down and woke me up just like a man, because I went to sleep just like a man. But I'm about to walk to the top of this ship. And when I get to the top of this ship, I'm going to speak to the wind and the water just like a God. And when I speak to the wind and the water and tell them, peace, be still. How can I do this? Because I have power. I am the Prince of Peace. I am the counselor. I'm going to give some counseling to the wind. And what y'all will remember, God never had a problem with nature. The first time he had a problem, it was with man, who he created in his image and in his likeness. So when he spoke to the wind and the water, they took peace. No confusion. When you've got confusion in your life, you need to just step aside, calm yourself down, and say to yourself, peace, be still. You have that authority. You have that power. You're the only one who can control you in situations that you don't know what to do in. Step back, step from it. One counselor that I used to talk to said, Reverend Williams, when you run into a stumbling block, he says, step back. Step up. Step on it and step over it. And when I discerned what he meant, he says, no problem that you face will prevent you from getting to the other side. Whatever you run into, you have the power and the authority to get over it. You don't have to go under it, but you can always go over it. Well, as we look in this scripture, and told you we wasn't going to hold you too long, and he said unto them, why are you so fearful? And they feared. Now watch this. There's some things that we don't see there in the text, but he said that other little boats followed him. He told the disciples, took him just as he was in the boat, but other little boats were following him. The multitude that he was teaching, that he was counseling, the multitude that he was teaching in parables, he left them on the seashore. While I was wrestling with that, I said, why did he leave them on the seashore? Because what you have to remember is there are some people in life that you can't take with you where you're going. Some people you have to leave them where they are because they are not qualified to go with you where you're going. So when you run into that type of people, that's called the multitude. That's people who will abuse and use you. People who will do what they can to hurt you. People who will stab you in your back. Those people can't go with you. You got to leave them where they are. If Abraham had left Lot, he wouldn't have ran into so many problems. Some people are just not qualified to go with you where you're going. And God have set a destination for you to go. But guess what he don't do? He gives you a destination, but he doesn't give you an itinerary. A destination is where you're going to end up. An itinerary is what you're going to go through to get to where God is sending you. So sometimes you're going to run into some problems, but you can't let those problems bind you down. Because when you look at it, spiritually, God is sending you through school. And as you go through school, you're going to run into some problems. And when you run into these problems, it's just another test. It's just something that you're going through. It's a test to make you better. It's a test to strengthen you. Because after you've gone through some of these situations, you find that when you come out of it better than you did when you got in it. Yes, you hear what I'm saying? So you get strength from what you've gone through. That's what God is constantly strengthening us by sending us through. Well, not sending us, but letting us or allowing us to go through certain situations. And as you come out of it, you come out of it better than you did when you went in it because you gained strength from it. Man said I was a man and he went to this gym. And when he got to this gym, he said had this big dude over there, and this big dude was pressing the iron, and he was pressing him. And so he said he walked over to the man. He said, why don't you just use a little bit like me? Why don't you, instead of trying to strain yourself and hollering and everything over here, why don't you just use a little bit like me? So the big man took and just wiped the sweat from his face. He looked at him. He said, Reverend, no pain, no gain. Some of us have gone through a lot of pain in this life. But all the pain that we've gone through have made us stronger. And we're able to handle things a whole lot better. After Jesus calmed the sea, the waves and the rain, the disciples that were with him became afraid. So why were they afraid? Jesus is there with them. He's there. If he's on board your vessel, then there's nothing else for you to worry about. Now look at it this way. Other little boats followed them. When the disciples went through a storm, the other little boats didn't turn back. They kept on following him in the storm. And you need people like that in your life. People who will stand with you when things are bad. People who will stand up with you when other folks are talking about you. People who will be with you. Those are the kind of people that you need to be with you. They didn't turn back in the storm. But watch this. Jesus was on board one boat, right? Am I right? Jesus was on board one boat. The rest of the boats were following him. They didn't turn back. The fact that they were following it, the only boat that was spoken to was the boat that Jesus was on. But watch what happened. They spoke to Jesus. Jesus spoke to the wind and the water. The other little boats were following him in the storm. The ripple effect of what happened on board the boat that Jesus was on had an effect of calmness on the other boats that were following him. So what does that say to the average individual? Sometimes you'll be around people who are getting a blessing. And once they've got that blessing, there's a blessing for you somewhere in the presence. But you have to have enough faith or intestinal fortitude to say to yourself, if she's blessed, my blessing is right around the corner. Tell you a story as I come to a close. There was a lady who was working at a business, and while working at that business, she this lady who was over her, she couldn't stand. So her supervisor had problems at home. She had a problem on the job. She had a problem with a supervisor and one of her co-workers. Unbeknown to them, the supervisor was having a problem because he had started drinking. The reason he started drinking was because his wife was always on his case. The reason his wife was always on his case was because she had a problem with reconciling herself to her mother. That's the way prayer worked. Now watch this. What happened was one day his wife got on her knees and talked to the Lord, asking her to reconcile her to her mother. God answered her prayer. When God answered her prayer, her husband stopped drinking because he didn't have to go through that confusion with her and her mother. After her husband was blessed, then he came to work, and he was not a bad supervisor after that. He started watching the lady that she couldn't stand. He started watching her and gave her a promotion. Then she gave the young lady a raise. A woman that she never knew, that she never saw, was the instrument of her blessing. Can y'all see that? That woman was the instrument of her blessing. So what you got to remember is that sometimes when you're going through some things, it's all for a reason. It's for a reason that you don't know. Because as you remember, Job had a conversation going on about him that he didn't know nothing about, that caused him to lose everything he had, but God blessed him in the end and gave him back everything that he had. As we get ready to come to a close, God sends you through situations. And the situation that he sends you through is because you have to take an examination at the end of the semester. And I've come here this morning to give you your examination. You don't have to have written on paper because it's an oral examination. I want y'all to talk back to me. I want you to answer them. Won't he make a way for you some? A way out of no way? Won't he make a way for you? Won't he take care of your needs? Won't he bless you? If you believe all of that, you need to stand up and give God some praise and say, I ain't made it to the end of the year yet, but I'm on my way to the other side. And once you get there, all you got to do is put your hands together and give God some praise and say, I made it, or I'm making it to the other side. Do you want to make it to the other side? God is blessing you. God is blessing when you hope that this helped you some kind of way. We hope that this is something that you can take home with you. I've gone different places and preached this month, and some people like a hooping message. Some people don't. Some people just like to say, I like to leave out a little bit better than I did.
You have been listening to Pastor Donald R. Jones of Bethesda Household of Prayer. We hope the word was nourishing to your soul and gave you a better understanding of God's love and grace. We want to encourage you to get into a Bible-based teaching church. And if you are in the New Orleans area, visit us at 7601 Westbank Expressway, Marrero, Louisiana. Thanks to you and your financial support, thousands have heard today's message. If you'd like to receive a copy of today's message, we can be reached at 504-348-0132. We are Bethesda Household of Prayer. Jesus loves you, and so do we. Join us next time, and be blessed.